Hi and welcome to a new video from our Wunschgetreu review section. Our review pro Remo is on the lookout again. This time he checked out 6 of the most popular air fryers. If you are looking for a suitable air fryer but don't know which one to get, stay tuned. Everything you need to know will be summed up in this video. Alright, here we go. First we'll start with the Princess XXL and the Medion XXL MD19279. Both devices have an adjustable temperature between 80 and 200 degrees Celsius, a digital touchscreen and a timer function which can be set to up to 60 minutes. But that's about all the similarities between the two devices. While the device from Medion is rather basic and has no special features, Princess device has a few aces up its sleeve. In addition to 2 included recipes, it comes with a high-speed recirculation function as well as a baking tray. On top of that, the capacity of 5.2 liters is a bit larger than Medion's, which offers 5 liters. In terms of power, Medion is in the lead again with 2000 watts. It also has 8 presets, which is one more than Princess has. Nevertheless, Princess still comes out on top in terms of features and technology. It simply has a few more conveniences than the device from Medion. So, one more preset doesn't make that much of a difference in the end. So much for the hard facts. But what is our first impression? Can the devices do a good job? I now have the 2 cheapest devices here in our comparison. These are the air fryers from Princess and Medion. And they are the cheapest indeed, and you can see that quite clearly while looking at the quality of workmanship. On the one hand, the materials are not quite as carefully selected as with the more expensive models, and on the other hand, you can see a few gaps here and there, which is an eyesore. Of course this doesn't look too well, but in the end does not negatively influence its function. What I personally disliked, when I first turned the device from Princess on, I noticed that the display is extremely hard to read. It's pretty difficult under certain lighting conditions, as well as the glossy display itself, which in my opinion doesn't help its case and could have been made much better even with its price point. Medion shows how it's done. First of all, you look at the display from above. This is a bit more comfortable while working at the kitchen table or on the sideboard. And secondly, we have a better visibility here, so that you can actually see what you're doing. There is still one small thing, and that is the protective cap for the locking button, which looks a bit cheap, especially on the device from Princess. It is wobbly and flaps back and forth, and it just gives a somewhat insecure feeling during usage. But I still have to say that there were no problems in regard to its functionality. Medion's solution is a bit better. This protective cap is simply a lid that you press up. As with both devices, the purpose is to open the air fryer. You simply press against it, which works pretty easy. And of course, you have the locking button to release the frying basket. Aside from these minor shortcomings, both devices are pretty easy to handle. Only the heat development needs to be mentioned at this point. Both air fryers get quite warm during usage. In our opinion, this was still okay with the device from Princess. Medion on the other hand gets quite hot, especially in the area at the front. We think that a bit of caution is required here. The presets, meaning the predefined cooking settings, were not really convincing with any of the air fryers in our comparison, including the devices from Princess and Medion. You can use the presets as a guideline, but you won't be able to avoid checking every now and then in order to see if your food has already been cooked properly. However, once you get the hang of it, it actually works quite well and you can easily estimate at what point your favorite food is ready. After some getting used to, you'll get satisfying results. French fries get very crispy on the outside, fluffy on the inside and taste very potatoey because they have been fried without the addition of fat. In addition to fries, breaded foods such as chicken nuggets also turn out quite well. We were surprised that wings and even baked goods such as muffins turned out well in these air fryers. What unfortunately didn't work out quite as well were vegetables. You do have to experiment a bit with the settings and check up on your food quite a lot so that you don't end up with burnt veggies. We found this to be rather impractical and think that you shouldn't put foods inside you'd normally cook in a pot. Still, the bottom line is that all the air fryers did well in regards to cooking, including the devices from Princess and Medion. Nevertheless, Medion comes out on top in terms of usage and its applications. It is not only a bit better in terms of handling, but is also the quietest air fryer in our comparison with approximately 58 decibels. Princess on the other hand is one of the louder devices with about 67 decibels. As mentioned before, both air fryers have minor weaknesses in terms of the workmanship. However, visually speaking, both devices are pleasing. The device from Princess in black and Medion in white both look up to date and fit into modern kitchens. However, we like Medion a bit better due to its almost futuristic design, which is of course always a matter of personal taste in the end. The air fryers can be cleaned by hand. There are only differences in regards to the removable parts. With the device from Princess, all parts, meaning the baking tray, frying basket and drawer, can be put in the dishwasher. With the device from Medion, however, only the frying basket can go in. The drawer has to be cleaned by hand. That is not as nice and costs Medion some valuable points. As a result, Princess is able to prevail in the end and steps up as the front runner in regards to the workmanship and cleaning of the device. Scoring overall, the Princess XXL wins the race amongst the cheaper devices. A few more features make the difference in the end, whereby the fryers are on par with the more expensive devices in terms of cooking. So, good fries from an air fryer don't have to be expensive, as long as you can live with a few sacrifices in regards to the features and functionality. And if you're interested in one of these products, make sure to check out the description below in order to find out more about the pricing and availability. Let's move on to the mid-range price devices. These air fryers stand out for one thing in particular. Each of these devices has a uniqueness here in our comparison. The device from Cosori stands out with its usability via an app. Simply put the desired food inside and make yourself comfortable in the living room. Now your time has come. You start the app and everything almost works on its own. I think that's really handy. Regardless of where you are in the house, if it's not too far off and you're thinking like, hey, I think the temperature is maybe a little too high or a little too low, you can simply change it via the app and adjust the settings. That's unbelievably convenient. The device from Ninja has another special feature, and you can probably already see it. We have two handles here. That's right, we have two frying baskets and two different cooking zones that work separately. And that is really practical. It relieves the work in the kitchen immensely because you only have to set the settings once in order to cook two different products in one go. You simply set the temperature and time and then can synchronize the whole thing in a way that both products are ready at the same time. I think that's really great. So much for the special features of the Cosori XXL and the Ninja Foodi AF300EU. As you can see, both air fryers specialize in different things. Cosori has not changed anything about the main concept of an air fryer itself, but rather focuses on a good operation and wealth of features. Ninja, on the other hand, adapts the concept of an air fryer and creates a device that focuses on flexible preparation and improved organization with its two cooking chambers. However, the device from Ninja also needs a lot of power for this. After all, it has to manage two cooking chambers with a capacity of 3.8 liters each. 2470 watts of power are required for this. In contrast, Cosori has a total capacity of 5.5 liters and 1700 watts of power, which is on par with most other XXL air fryers. As previously mentioned, it shines even brighter with its features. It positions itself with a total of 11 presets, which is more than all the other devices in our comparison had to offer. Preheating, a keep warm feature, a shake reminder, planning functions and all sorts of recipes via app and included book are additional, quite useful conveniences of this air fryer. Ninja, on the other hand, shows off with an adjustable temperature of up to 240 degrees Celsius and its sync and match function, which provides great comfort while operating the two-compartment concept. Unfortunately, the 6 presets of the Ninja device are quite simple. There is also a lack of accessories and other features. In the end, Cosori has simply more to offer in terms of features and technology. Cosori even achieves the best result in the entire comparison and makes the high-priced devices look a bit old. The strength of both air fryers revealed themselves during usage. Cosori shines with a tidy and easy to read display and the usability via the app, which also works flawlessly. It is particularly comfortable that the various recipes from Cosori have been integrated into the app and can be worked through with the included step-by-step instructions. Ninja's two-compartment concept naturally requires a certain kind of operation, which we think was solved very well via the selectability of the individual compartments in combination with the sync and match function. The devices are also very intuitive and easy to use, so both scored quite well in our comparison. Also, in terms of the heat development, both devices are doing better than the cheaper devices in this comparison. Although, it has to be said that these two air fryers also get quite warm. As we already mentioned, the presets for all devices in our comparison should be treated with some caution. Therefore, we will only use them here as guidelines as well. If you look into the frying basket from time to time and gain some experience with the respective device, the results will be pretty good. Fries are crispy on the outside, soft and fluffy on the inside and taste very potatoey because less fat is involved. Breaded foods such as chicken nuggets turn out quite good as well, and even wings ended up gorgeous looking. Baking with the device from Ninja wasn't as easy though. We suspect that this is due to the heat, which can circulate as well in the two narrow frying baskets in comparison to one large cooking chamber. But again, you can experiment a bit with the settings to find a way to go. The vegetables didn't really turn out well with the devices from Cosori and Ninja either. As with the less expensive air fryers, we recommend that things you normally prepare in a pot should stay in a pot. Overall, as with the other air fryers, you can achieve good results while cooking. However, Ninja still manages to come out on top in terms of the usage and its applications. Not only did it impress with the great concept of its two-compartment system, but it is also a bit quieter with about 60 decibels in comparison to Cosori at around 67 decibels. Let's move on to the quality of workmanship. Medium price point. Sure, you spend more money. Yes, we have a few more features, but still. The devices struggle a little bit with the usual gaps, even here. Of course, that's just an eyesore. It's not a bad thing in terms of its function, but you can see it and it's just not quite as nice. What I personally don't like quite as much, look at the device from Ninja. Actually a good looking device. Everything seems coherent, all good and well, one might think. Sure, the gaps are noticeable. But what really stands out for me personally is this chrome strip at the top. I think it stands out so much because it is chrome. You can see clearly that this metal strip is relatively wavy and spotty. It simply looks cheap and does not match the rest of the device. Less would have been more in this case. I still have one addition, and this is in regards to the device from Cosori. We have this release button here, or more specifically this protective cap, which is the same as the device from Princess. I've already mentioned that it looks very cheap and seems to be loosely attached, which makes a very insecure impression. Well, we have the exact same system here. It's also a bit wobbly here too, but definitely not as bad. They obviously managed to get a better result. So Princess, a small message for you. It could have been worked a bit better with exactly the same materials. Besides that, Cosori has something special to offer, and in my opinion, that's the finish on its surface. Sure, we do have plastic here, but it has a brushed metal look. Personally, I think that's very nice and looks gorgeous. It visually upgrades the whole product, and you do have one advantage with this look. And that becomes apparent while handling the device. It's not always at the same point, you might move it around, put it in a cupboard from time to time and so on. This surface provides a bit more grip than you'd have with a device which has a smooth plastic surface. Ultimately, this makes the air fryer much easier to hold and move around. So much for the quality of workmanship and the visual appeal. But what about cleaning? Once again, the air fryers themselves need to be cleaned by hand. The removable parts may be cleaned in the dishwasher instead, which is of course more convenient than washing by hand. It's just a pity that the frying tray of the Cosori device apparently shouldn't be put in a dishwasher. Of course, this costs valuable points, which means that Ninja also comes out on top with a small lead in terms of the quality of workmanship and cleaning of the device. In the end, however, the Cosori XXL wins the race. The many features, the great usability due to the display and app, and the many recipes that are well integrated into the app are simply fun and make cooking with this air fryer a joyful experience. Nevertheless, we do not want to badmouth Ninja's device in any way. It is still one of the better devices in this comparison and has implemented the concept with the two cooking chambers beautifully. If you are more interested in practical aspects of the device, for instance because you want to make cooking for the family a bit easier, Ninja's air fryer is definitely a good choice. Let's move on to the Tefal EY401D Easy Fry Deluxe XL and the Philips HD 9762 Air Fryer XXL. With 3.5 liters, Philips has less capacity than Tefal with 4.2 liters. On the other hand, Philips provides much more power with 2225 watts in comparison to Tefal with 1500 watts. Philips has also the wider temperature range available, which lies between 40 and 200 degrees Celsius and includes a number of features besides the 5 provided presets. These features include a keep warm function, a basket separator and a recipe book. When buying this device, you can also order one of the so-called kits if you want. These include a baking kit, a party kit and a barbecue kit. Tefal, on the other hand, comes across as quite basic and has hardly any features worth mentioning besides the 8 presets. That's not bad in itself, but it can't quite keep up in a direct comparison with Philips or other devices like the one from Cosori. The bottom line is that Philips wins the race in terms of features and technology. That's the hard facts for now, but how do we rate the first impression of the two devices? And last but not least, let's talk about our two high-priced devices. One thing definitely stands out here, especially with the device from Tefal, and I have to emphasize this quite clearly. It is kept very simple. I mean it, the device is just very basic in terms of all its features. But it does have the best quality of workmanship. Definitely. No gap issues here at all. All materials fit well together. Awesome finish, brushed metal look and gorgeous looking. On top of that, it has an easy to read display and everything is structured nicely. I'm really satisfied with it. Sure, it's very basic and simple looking, but really, great quality of workmanship. Philips, on the other hand, does have some small gaps, but I have to emphasize yet again that it's not as bad as with the other devices. And we do have a great variety of features with this device. The menu is also structured very nicely. We have classic buttons here, which you don't see too often nowadays. In addition, there is this dial-like button. I think it's great, because you have two functions in one go. And what's also quite unique is the fact that the whole basket is mounted on a rail system, which works like a drawer in the end. Of course, you're still able to take the frying basket out individually. Next feature is the small plate, which is incorporated at the bottom as a part of the fat removal technology. That's just to make sure that the fat is kept away from the product inside. It drips down, falls into the tub and is just taken out of the cycle of frying. So, in the end, we can fry with even less fat involved. Philips can score again with its integrated cable storage on the back. None of the other devices in our comparison has this feature. Nevertheless, Tefal is also an easy to use and easy to handle device. Apart from the menu button, which is a bit misleading in our opinion, everything works great here. We think you should rather be cautious while using the device from Philips because of the fact that the frying basket is taken out without a tray. As a result, it can easily happen that some of your food slips through the grid and ends up on the floor or table. In terms of the heat development, however, Tefal unfortunately cannot get great scores. It gets quite hot and you do have to be careful not to burn your fingers. This is probably due to the choice of materials. The presets are also to be understood as guidelines for these devices, although with Philips this seems to have been already taken into account conceptually. Unlike the other devices, no cooking times are specified. That means that you are not tempted to rely too much on the preset values. Even if you look at the technical development of Philips devices, everything speaks for this approach. For example, Philips has incorporated the so-called smart sensing technology in a more advanced version of its air fryer, namely the HD9860. This device can automatically adjust the temperature and cooking time on its own. If you're interested in this system, check the description below the video to find out more. Coming back to the devices in this comparison, however, it is advisable to look into the frying basket from time to time and gain some experience with the device. If you do this, the results are very good, just like with the other air fryers. French fries and breaded foods like chicken nuggets leave nothing to be desired and retain much of their own flavor due to the fat-free frying. Wings, muffins and the like also turn out perfectly if you experiment a bit with the settings. You should only be a bit careful with veggies, or to be absolutely safe, leave them in the cooking pot. Unfortunately, we did not notice the effect of the fat removal technology with Philips' device during usage. Perhaps there is a measurable fat reduction, but we could not detect it in terms of taste or residue in the frying tray. Nevertheless, Philips is a bit ahead in most regards and thus can win in terms of usage and its applications. Handling the device works simply a bit better, the heat development is more tolerable than with the device from Tefal, and to top it off, Philips is a bit less noisy. Nevertheless, both work equally well while cooking and can be recommended without any worries. Visually, both devices are pleasing, although Tefal, as already mentioned, has a better quality of workmanship. However, Philips has the edge in terms of the design, since Tefal's stainless steel look is a bit outdated and might not appeal to everyone anymore. When it comes to cleaning, the devices are in no way inferior to each other. Of course, the devices themselves can be cleaned by hand. The removable parts of both air fryers can be put in a dishwasher, which makes cleaning very easy. Although you have to be a little careful in regards to the latching of the grid with Philips device. Some food residue can be easily caught up here. We therefore recommend separating the basket and the grid before putting everything into the dishwasher. As a result, Tefal can score in regards to the workmanship and cleaning. It simply has the best quality of processing in our comparison, which certainly will come in handy in terms of durability. Even though Tefal could score in this case, it cannot overtake Philips in the end. More features and more comfort during usage get Philips the decisive points. Nevertheless, it can be said that both devices meet high requirements and are solid devices for their price points. Customers with a higher demand in regards to quality are well served with the devices from both Tefal and Philips. All of the air fryers in our comparison were thoroughly checked by us and basically all did well. Nevertheless, we would now like to present the winners of this comparison. Coming in first, we have the Philips HD9762 Airfryer XXL, which was able to achieve strong scores in all the categories. Second place goes to the Cosori XXL, which stood out with many features and a great usability. And our third spot goes to both the Ninja Foodi AF300EU and the Tefal EasyFry Deluxe. Alright, we have checked these air fryers for you. If you are interested in one of these devices, just take a look at the description below. There you will find out more about the pricing and availability. Apart from that, just stay tuned. Our end card will provide a few more interesting recommendations for you.